Bikkhurim Perigimel Mishnah Yud Aleph. Our Mishnah starts by telling us, Eimosai Omu Tosefes HaBikkhurim KaBikkhurim. Following on from our previous Mishnah, when we mentioned the halacha that Tosefes Bikkhurim, the supplemental or additional Bikkhurim that one brings in the basket with the main Bikkhurim, has a din of Bikkhurim itself. The Mishnah now asks, where do we say that? Where is this halacha true that the Tosefes Bikkhurim has the din of Bikkhurim? Bizman shehi ba min ha'aretz. Only when the Tosefes Bikkhurim is such that it grew in Eretz Yisrael itself. But v'im eino ba min ha'aretz, if the Tosefes Bikkhurim did not grow in Eretz Yisrael, eino ka Bikkhurim, it is not like Bikkhurim. What is this Mishnah telling us? So Bartanura has two pshatim here. First pshat in Bartanura is that we're talking about here a Tosefes Bikkhurim that grew me'ever layarden. It grew on the east side of the Yarden as opposed to the west side, which is Eretz Yisrael proper. On the east side were living Reuven, Gad, and Chatzi Shevet Menashe, half of the Shevet Menashe, and it was not part of Eretz Yisrael proper, but for certain halachas it has a sort of a quasi-status, and you'll recall that we mentioned in Perik Aleph Mishnah Yud that Bikkhurim can be brought from produce that's grown in Be'ever Hayarden. Says the Mishnah here that this is a clarification of the previous Mishnah, that the halacha of Tosefes Bikkhurim being like Bikkhurim only applies when the Tosefes Bikkhurim is that of Shivas Haminim which grew in Eretz Yisrael proper. That's the first pshat in Bartanura. Bartanura has a second pshat. Second pshat is, he says, this is according to the Tana of Reb Shimon ben Nanas. Reb Shimon ben Nanas, we brought in Mishnah Tes, told us that the Ita Bikkhurim, the Bikkhurim, the crown of the Bikkhurim that we bring to beautify the basket, around the edge of the basket, can even be brought from fruit from Chutz La'aretz that didn't grow in Eretz Yisrael at all. Says the Bartanura, presumably this also applies to Tosefes Bikkhurim as well, that the Tosefes Bikkhurim can also be brought from fruit from Chutz La'aretz. And our Mishnah is telling us that Tosefes Bikkhurim does not have a din of Bikkhurim itself when the fruit that's brought is from Chutz La'aretz. Tosefes Yontov objects to this pshat of the Bartanura big time. The lashon he uses is milsa de tamirihi. It's a complete wonder to him. You can't understand this pshat at all. Why? He says just because Reb Shimon ben Nanas tells us that we are allowed to use produce which comes from Chutz La'aretz for the Ita Bikkhurim, doesn't at all mean that you can extend that and extrapolate it to Tosefes Bikkhurim. Tosefes Bikkhurim is much more chomer in many halachas than Ita Bikkhurim, and therefore one does not necessarily apply to the other. So he doesn't agree with that pshat at all. It's also worth pointing out that Rambam in Hilchos Bikkhurim tells us that even though this Mishnah says that Tosefes Bikkhurim does not have a halacha of Bikkhurim when the fruit is not from Eretz Yisrael, whichever pshat you learn that, but as far as eating it b'tahara is concerned, that still applies. Even though it's not like Bikkhurim proper, it still can only be eaten by Kohanim, still only be eaten in Yerushalayim, and still only eaten b'tahara. Both the fruit has to be tahor and the Kohen himself has to be tahor. And as far as that halacha is concerned, it is like Bikkhurim. It's only as far as whether you need to take Maisa and Dema is concerned, the other halacha mentioned in the previous Mishnah, only as far as that's concerned, is it not considered to be like Bikkhurim.